Good day, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's music channel. We bring classical music events from international stages to the audiences around the globe. Hello again, I'm Anna Uspinskaya and I'll host today's program for you. Welcome again to the episode of Beyond Recording with Gianriccardo Pera, who is the head of the audio engineering department at the Cicerone Music and Art CiMA recording label. In every episode, we go beyond the final recording. We touch on how to do many technical aspects, and also we will get into the nuts and bolts of a very challenging area of publishing and distribution. So stay with us from episode to the episode. In the first episode, which was last week on Friday, we introduced the Lehner Quartet. It's a string quartet which records and specializes and performs contemporary music by living composers. We also talked about the main characteristics of this musical language of the contemporary music for string quartet. And we touched on the role of the performers in making this very complex music accessible to normal listeners and engaging to everyone from music lovers to professionals. And now we are in the more technical area where I'm looking forward to hear Gianriccardo Pera's expertise, which is the how this type of music influences the way the audio engineering and the labs approach the recording. And I would like to welcome to my studio Gianriccardo Pera, my guest and an expert in the field. Gianriccardo, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you with me and with our audience. Let's continue our conversation.
Big pleasure for me to be with you again. Hi, everyone. Hi, Anna.
Yes. So, from the technical perspective, let's get straight to the meat of it.
Yes.
How does this music influence the way you approach recording? And I understand this is a very big question and a very general one. So, I'm totally fine to go along with talking about microphone placements and
Yes.
ambience and all of
Yes.
that. Let's try to cover as much of it as possible today.
Yes. Well, I will start saying that when we record this kind of music, of course, we cannot only rely on the concept that we are just recording four instruments playing together. Of course, that cannot be so that simple, because we must first understand the architecture of the composition, and this is actually the main concept that we follow. What is the composition about? How it is engineered by the composer before we can approach and understand how to record it. It's This is very important because, especially in modern composition, sometimes a small gesture from one instrument can be the most important event in that given moment. You know, so as we can see here, we have a large sonic architecture, we have individual voices, and we have an architecture of a composition, and then we have main events here and there according to the phrases. And it's very important to preserve these details, because if we lose them, of course, the possibly an important part of the composition gets lost, and if it gets lost, the audience will not actually hear what the composer wanted to communicate.
Oh, that's a terrifically important question. And I want to also mention that on the path to recording and then editing and mastering, there's so many stages. We work also closely together with the composers. So there are a
Yes.
couple of stages before the actual recording happens.
Absolutely.
The quartet rehearses on their own, but then we also have a uh, scheduled session where the composer
Yes.
is remotely present or physically present if they can travel to the venue.
Yes.
And so some of this complexity is negotiated and kind of determined before the information goes to Gianriccardo and his uh, team of audio editors, and then it comes back to the recording engineer with additional instructions for specifics. So yeah, back to you.
Yeah, yes, you described it well, and this testifies as a good result of publishing a record is actually a big teamwork, where every part of the team has to be very well synchronized with all the rest. We have the composers, we have the players, possibly we have a conductor, and then we have a venue which also plays an important role. We'll talk about that, and then we have the recording, and
The
then we have
equipment, the positioning. Oh my god, that's
yeah,
complicated.
it's pretty much a list of things that we have to do, and then there is the final editing, which in theory, and the mastering, which in theory should be the final result, where everyone says in this chain of people that we have involved in a production would possibly say, yes, that's what I meant. Because if they say, no, that's not exactly what I meant, I have a problem, because I have to go back and understand what was that we missed. And fortunately, I'm not, of course, you know me, I never self-celebrating, but as a matter of fact, I have to say, I'm pretty proud to say that so far we didn't have many cases in which we had to re-edit. Sometimes also the re-editing according to some more ideas that come meanwhile can be a very important and interesting phase. But if everything goes well, of course, with the editing and mastering, the process should be completed.
Straightforward, yeah.
So yes, so sometimes well, this, yeah, we had to re-edit something according to some more advices from the composer. Let's consider one more fact, that sometimes we record compositions that are recorded for the first time. So it's not a cover that we are, is not a renowned piece that we are. So the composer himself or herself could discover things once the composition is actually recorded, because these people would listen to their own composition for the first time.
Yeah.
Of course, the composers, they are big specialists of music. They know every instrument, everything very well. They have an incredible mind. I'm still wondering how a composer composes, because it's an unbelievable job. But of course, one thing is to listen and like you're playing a
Imagination,
recording in
it's,
your
yeah.
mind, and one thing is, oh, now we finally and really listen to the result. So of course they
Yeah,
can have.
and then of course the performers, the members of the string quartet, they also add something, some interpretive ideas to the piece. So the piece lives through those stages and develops. And
Yes.
we've had quite a few comments from the composers where they said, "Oh, I didn't even know the piece was that good."
Yes.
And
Exactly.
discovering some things which they
Yeah.
ideas, like you said, which they didn't have initially.
Yes, that's the great thing about doing this job, recording, editing, mastering, and the whole
It's a very
process.
creative process, extremely creative.
Yes, we discover things that we wouldn't imagine before, because meanwhile there is the providing of all the people involved, musicians, producers, sound engineers. They add something on their own, and the result is the composition and its original architecture, plus all the personal culture and
Yeah,
ideology, philosophy, and whatever else.
yeah,
That
everyone
it,
brings very enriching input. That's absolutely, yeah, true. But
absolutely,
I don't want to distract you from the technical sides of it. So
yeah.
I know you started to speak about the acoustics, microphone position. Let's continue on that.
Yes, well, let's talk about how do we place the microphone in a case like Lehner Quartet. Uh, Originally, let me just waste 1 minute to talk about history of sound recording, okay? Originally, and for a long time, that the main theory was to place, let's say, three microphones, sometimes five, sometimes four, but let's say three because it's easier to understand. Three microphones in front of the ensemble. So one microphone would be in the center, one microphone would be on the right, one microphone would be on the left, and all of them would capture the whole sound, but of course from a different angle. So we would have a right channel already in the venue, a left channel, and the center channel, which could be, raised or decreased according to the needs and to the preference. Uh, Lately, we changed. By lately, I mean in the last 5 years, seven, also in this particular era, we changed our mind. We started because of what we said before. Every small gesture could have a particular meaning. So we started placing the microphone much closer to the instruments and dedicating one microphone to each instrument, especially in the case of string ensemble. We can see this. Thank you, Ante. You can see we place one microphone for each violin. It's very close, and another microphone for the cello. You can see that we go directly to the source of the sound, so we try to stay uh, not too close, but this image is quite realistic because normally the microphone for a violin is placed 30 or 40 centimeters from the violin, the instrument itself, and it's placed in a way that lets the musician free from hitting the microphone with the bow.
That's right.
It happens sometimes. So this is also to be considered that is comfortable for a musician. And then the viola maybe is a little further, and then there is the cello, which has a completely different microphone placement. It's on the ground, pointing high, trying to capture the width that naturally the cello would diffuse with its sound. And so we have four different tracks, as we call them, four different lines of recordings of the sound. And then we can decide, phrase by phrase, bar by bar, what was the main event according to development of the composition. I have to say there's another thing that we cannot neglect, that modern composers, they have a lot of fantasy. Of course, they are composers of the 21st century, and so they are
And they
capable of.
also, I'm sorry to interrupt. I
Wait,
also want to say this is an additional complexity, but also it also makes the music even more engaging.
yes.
Contemporary composers are really keen on polyphony.
Oh yes.
So
Oh yes, they
it's
are.
we are in the world of neo-polyphony renaissance. So maybe that also has something to do with the development of the technique of performing on those instruments. Because when I was very young and just studying, we considered, I'm sorry, viola players, we considered viola players second-rate
Ah
musicians who
yes,
couldn't move
yes.
their fingers too fast along the fingerboard, which is absolute nonsense in
No,
modern world. The viola players are just as virtuosic musicians as the violin and flute or piano,
definitely.
whatever. So, and the composers go along with the development of the instruments themselves and technique of playing those instruments, and of course the pedagogical development of shortening and making the learning process shorter and more effective. Now, 7, 8, 9 year olds are playing as virtuosic as 50 years ago. It would take people until their 20s to achieve. So the
Yes,
composers are very much in tune with it because they always work with contemporary living performers,
yes,
and
yes.
so there's enhanced abilities of players. They influence how they compose. So what I've noticed in the string quartet in particular, each part sometimes carries tremendous intensity and virtuosity and dynamic range and everything. Yeah, back to you, Gianriccardo.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. So they are putting any kind of sound, sometimes very short sound, but that have a particular meaning for the composition. That's why we have to capture every little thing that every instrument can do. That's why we go so close with the microphones. And so also our job has changed completely along the years according to the developing virtuosity and fantasy and the extrovert way to compose by the composers and by the players. And that's what makes the Lehner Quartet a very particular ensemble, and it makes it really a special one because they have a natural curiosity. We mentioned this already in the first episode, that they really have a natural curiosity towards the development of sound and the the several variations that it can contain, starting from the composition already. So there is a fantasy in the composition, then there is another layer of fantasy in the performance by the performers, and we want to capture them all. Now, if you want, we can listen to a music excerpt that we have, and this from Lehner Quartet Volume 2 by Janos Karecki. The composition is called, we have a small excerpt called Kata Tuta. And I mentioned it again, we said it last time, is better if our listener could have a headset or, a decent stereo.
Both speakers.
Yes,
Let's get
exactly.
both speakers in.
Because it allows to hear more this small difference that they are in the several track, and you will see that the listener should have the sensation that in different layer of information there is harmony, there is melody, there's everything that normally there is in a composition, and then there are some small but important events, micro events, we could say, along the composition. And of course, if our listeners have a different impression, they can put their impression in the comments, and we will be happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you. That's impressive.
Yeah, yeah,
I was listening to this recording, Gianriccardo, and I had a question which probably at least a lot of musicians would have, and the listeners too. I have very good headphones, granted. Maybe if I was listening on the phone, I wouldn't capture that. But I had this incredible effect in the earphones, the sound, like a surround sound effect,
yeah,
like the music was really living in the 3D space,
yes.
and I really love that. I want to ask you, as a as an expert, what's the secret of it? How it's done? And yeah, anything you can share about it.
Well, the answer to that is it can be complex, but as a matter of fact, it's based on a very simple statement. There is no secret. Let me explain.
No secret if you know it, right?
No secret if you know it. Exactly. We just try to uh, render the sensation that the listener would have if he would be present in the venue. So it's like you have a nice living room in your house, and these four musicians is just in front of they are just in front of you, and they are you know 3 meters, 4 meters from you, and you're sitting on your couch and you're listening to them. Because when this happens, actually you start to have this sensation of surround around you, like the sound is naturally evolving and distributing in a very natural way and very pleasant way around you. So this is the basic concept. And here we are going to talk about how do we handle and how do we manage the so-called stereo effect. Now, stereo effect can mean a lot of things, but in our case, it just means distributing the instruments according to a imaginary idle venue where you, the listener, are in the center, are in the, let's say, in the first row or maybe the fifth row, and you're listening to this sound. As we saw,
Gianriccardo,
yes,
Gianriccardo, I'm sorry to interrupt. We
yeah,
ran out of the time
oh,
allotted for this program,
oh my God,
and I am all attention. I'm so curious to know how you outlined the goal, and it's I think it's an admirable goal for any audio engineers to accomplish. But what comes from your lab after the editing, rendering, and mastering is done is extraordinary.
thank
I'm
you
a
very much.
recording musician. I've recorded with many, in many various settings, and this trait of a real, tangible sound traveling, which is a signature of how you approached the Lehner Quartet recordings,
Yeah,
is something I want us to unpack in more technical detail, but we'll have to postpone it to the next lecture.
very well.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
And to the listeners, if you have any questions along the way, and or comments, or you have different opinions you would like to discuss, please leave comments during the program or after the program, and we can bring those comments on the screen, and we can have Gianriccardo Pera respond to your comments at any time. So with this, Gianriccardo, we're going to have to say goodbye to our audience until next Friday.
to next Friday, of course. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Anna.
Yes, thank you so much, Gianriccardo, for joining my studio and for sharing your expertise with everyone. And we want to thank all of our supporters, many companies around the world who help us organize many events in different countries on many continents, and of course, the internet TV broadcasting. We bring those events, news, and musical discussions to the audiences with the help of many, many people. Very grateful for your support. And of course, we are grateful for the audience members who join us, who are interested in our work and communicate with us, bring your ideas to us, talk to us. We always respond. We are very interested to hear what you think. We stream on many, many different platforms on all the major platforms and many also boutique platforms, privately owned, which find our programming valuable to demonstrate to their own audiences. So wherever you like us, we would be grateful. Follow our channels, subscribe, and for more content like this. And my thanks go to our wonderful team and our director
Yeah.
of the show today, Ante Božić Kudrić, behind the scenes, doing all those visuals and presentations for you and illustrating our discussion with Gianriccardo Pera. Thank you, Gianriccardo. Thank you, Ante. Thank you, my wonderful team of engineers and producers. Thank you, the audience, for being with us. And we'll see you
Thank you all.
next Friday.
Thank you all. See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.